Time now for our rants and raves of the week, starting with you, Justin.
I've got a rave this week for Devin Allen. He's a 26-year-old amateur photographer from Baltimore. He's been getting a lot of attention. His photos have been seen around the world through his Instagram feed. He's a young man who very much was like Freddie Gray. He grew up in a neighborhood not that far from where Gray was arrested. His photos have become so popular that they have taken off. They've been retweeted everywhere. And this week, one of his photos wound up on the cover of Time magazine, which is a pretty amazing accomplishment if you think about it. We talk so much about sort of how citizen media and how everyone can be involved in the news these days. And here's a young man who basically went out.
That's funny, because I actually thought that was from 1960.
It looks like it. He's been shooting primarily in black and white, and it's fantastic. I advise everyone to go take a look at it. But it's remarkable because this young man goes out, does what we think of what journalists do every day, but he's just reporting on what's happening in his neighborhood. He said that the reason he picked up a camera and he's gotten so much into photography is because of the life that was around him and the people that he lost. So it's just
How does he make a living?
Well, that's the big question. When you're an amateur photographer, who knows? But you know, hopefully this will open a lot more windows for him.
Jeff just told me he's a portrait photographer, and he does that as well. So I guess that's good to know. That's great, interesting. All right, Dan.
I have a rant and a rave for Donald Sussman, who is the owner, for now, of the Portland Press-Herald in Maine and some of its affiliated papers. They go under the name of Maine Today. Sussman bought the Press-Herald 3 years ago and has presided over something of a comeback for the paper. Local ownership seemed like a great thing. Now he's turning around and selling it, which is really too bad. If he does sell it, it'll be the fourth sale for the Press-Herald in 17 years, which is a lot of turnover. My rave is that he is going to sell it to a local businessman in Maine, a man named Reed Brower, who's at least making the right kind of noises. At least he's not selling it to a national chain. So I hope that the people of Maine will continue to be well served by their local paper up there.
You're an alumnus of that.
I am. And
the
as somebody who used to work there during the period when it was owned by the Blethyn family and then was sold to Richard Connor, it's a very difficult time. There's a lot of uncertainty, and if you're on the staff right now, I remember when it was sold by the Blethens, Rich Connor came in and said a lot of the same right things. He says that he has a background from Maine, he wants to invest in the newspaper, he wants to be a part of the community. And in a period of years, Connor was basically run out of town, and there was some questions about whether he was basically stealing money from the paper. That's obviously the worst case scenario. Sussman, that's got to be the worst case scenario. Sussman, though, on the other hand, though, he seemed like he was doing all the right things. I mean, after the devastation of the last ownership, he was putting a lot of money and resources into people, basically, which is what the paper sorely needed.
And it's too bad that he decided not to continue to do that for a few more years, but I guess we can't force him to keep owning the paper.
Yeah, was it making money, do you know?
During the Connor years, it was very, very lean, but now I believe that they were on the right track. So, I mean, it's a very small chain of newspapers in a state that I think you could do really well with local ownership. So, you know, best of luck if they get a good buyer.
All right, Callie, what do you got?
Well, I have a rant for Forbes magazine. One of their regular columnists, Tom Watson, who writes a column called Cause Media, and I've read it before, did a piece called Sexism in the Media as the Election Heats Up, Are We Nearer to the Tipping Point for Equality? And he interviewed a young woman who is based here at a Boston-based organization called Women Action in the Media. And you see that there she is, Jamia Wilson. And they just talked, you know, nothing in here that's scorching. Just what do you think might happen? Hillary Clinton, she said, she compared what happened in 2008 to now. Here's what we have to be careful of, you know, but we're aware now, think it might be a little bit better, blah, blah, blah. And Forbes pulled it, and he wrote at the end of the piece, I'm sorry to say that they pulled it. We vigorously disagreed about why. They said it wasn't appropriate for whatever reason. And he says, so he resigned.
Wait, the article wasn't appropriate?
That's what they said. He said, I posted this interview, and the editors found it inappropriate for this section of Forbes I have contributed my social ventures column to for the last 3 years, and they removed it this morning. I strongly disagree with their decision, and we have parted ways. I note that the name of his blog is Cause Media, so I'm not quite sure, because I was thinking, well, maybe the feminism thing, but that's part of...
They calling her veracity into question?
No. Listen, this is what she does to talk about media images. That's what Women Action in the Media, that they monitor images
I feel like there's
language.
something missing from this.
I don't know.
Let's get on it, Cal.
Yeah, okay.
All right, John, what have you got?
Well, I have a rant for a number of our most prominent novelists. Last time I saw it was
yeah.
up to about 18 of them who are boycotting the upcoming annual dinner of PEN, a literary organization devoted to promoting free speech, because they're giving an award for courage to the surviving staffers of Charlie Hebdo, the satirical French magazine that was the scene of a vicious slaughter by Islamic extremists. Why? Well, picking up on the idiocy put out by Gary Trudeau, the cartoonist, recently, they all believe that Charlie Hebdo ought not to be honored because they were punching down and basically trashing poor, dispossessed Muslims in France. One problem is one of them already has admitted Charlie Hebdo does not do that. They have never done that. Their targets, which span the range of religions in France, have been religious leaders who are extreme and public officials. They don't trash ordinary people. So these royalty-fattened, comfy little hypocrites just decided to hop on the PC bandwagon and trash a cause they supposedly believed in. Well done.
All right. Well, finally, I have a rant tonight for the word police who are coming after the media for their use of the word thug. Thug is not a racial term. It has derivations in Hindu and Urdu, and meaning thag, T-H-A-G. But it's a ruffian, an assassin. It has become that, Callie, but it is not a racial term. And you know what? Sometimes you just have to stand up and say, this is a term that's completely legitimate. It's a real word. It's applicable to many, many instances, not all African American, not all Latino American. I always associated it, frankly, with the mafia. That's the first time I ever heard the term. So I, for one, intend to keep using it in a legitimate context.
Well, the criticism is about it's being used not legitimately. That's
How?
the criticism. Because in the way that they applied it to those young kids, those high schoolers who were out there, and not making a distinction between those people who actually were doing some action that perhaps could be described as such, and others. That's why. And when it becomes a point that it does have a racial overtone, you have to be extra careful to make sure that you're using it appropriately. Justin is nodding his head. I am not the only
Using
one.
the word inappropriate is one thing, but it's the word itself is not racially charged.
That's not the criticism. Is about how the word
they're
is
saying
used.
it's a racially charged. We should have had a whole discussion
Yes,
about
we
this.
definitely should.
All right,
And we still
that's our
can.
show. Tell us what you think. Email us, tweet us, or leave a comment. We're always on at beatthepress.org. For all of us, I'm Emily Rooney. Thanks for joining us.